Okay, so here we are, Jen. We've obviously been chatting a little bit about before we hit record, and we had a little chat during the day about some of the things that we're both thinking about and feeling, and things that we care about that we might want to talk about in this hour.
Hmm.
So I'm I'm honestly feeling right now nervous, excited. My stomach's been flipping all day. A little bit about just the sheer, how much I feel about doing podcasts and how excited I am to be doing this.
Yeah.
We talked about it in our one-to-one, like almost a year ago, about me doing stuff like this and about how it felt real and exciting and something I should do. But also the nerves are there because the weekend that I had with you and the rest of the guys back in July 2016, almost a year and a half ago,
Mhm.
it transformed my life. It transformed, you know, my friend who introduced me to you and to the workshop warned me that I would not be the same after this weekend, and that even though I was really tight for money at that particular moment in time, and she knew this and knew it was going to be very hard for me to be able to go. And it was almost impossible. I actually emailed you just to see if we could just do like a one-to-one or something, because I didn't think I managed to do the full thing. But somehow we managed it. It was meant to be, and nothing could have prepared me for how intense that experience was, in a good way. I don't want to just be me talking this whole podcast, but
Go for
I think
it.
I just want to set it up. I just want to let people know, I suppose, why I've got you on here. And the main reason is because of the experience that I had with you. Maybe we'll go into that a little bit more deeply later on. I think, it'd be great just to hear a little bit about you, Jen. Just, you're homegrown, but you're living in uh, Austin now. And, can you tell us a little bit about that journey, that personal journey of yours?
Yes, actually, you just brought back some memories of my very first workshop that I attended in the same work, which was 18 years ago now, almost 19 years ago, on the Antrim Road in Belfast, because I'm Antrim born and bred, Antrim mine. And I went along to the workshop with my then teacher. And exactly the same testimony. I was blown away. I mean, I was raised atheist, thankfully. And so I really just began a spiritual journey. I was only 20 years old and needed something because the lights were going out for me. I mean, it was coming to the end of days. I couldn't take it anymore. It just wasn't working. Life was not working. No matter what I did, it felt like I was coming up short. And I had eating disorders and was severely depressed and chronic fatigue, lots of different physical aches and pains, but mainly emotional, mental issues, and tremendous self-hate and shame, and a physical tension in the body that manifested in feeling very, very disconnected, and having to compensate through bulimia mainly, which was my main vice. But I needed help, and I'd attempted suicide, and there was a gang rape, and there was all kinds of, it just kept getting stronger and messier. And I went along to this workshop that a friend had told me that was working on cellular memory. So it was some form of cellular healing. And I mean, at that time, I didn't know what that was, no, at all, but I just said, yeah, I'm going, sign me up. Went along, and within 30, 40 minutes, I was hit with something. I was hit with this energy field, unseen intelligence or presence. The teacher was not touching me. He wasn't even talking to me. He was talking about, we were doing introductions, in fact. People were just saying their name and why they were there. And I felt things erupting and moving. And yeah, before you know it, it was like an explosion of a cathartic release. Totally unheard of, completely new for me. The only thing I could, associate it to at that time was the feeling I had when I was taking ease at Kelly Support Rush. And so, yeah, it was mind blowing. And I was ready. I had already taken a year or two out from university. and couldn't make my mind up what I wanted to do. It was going to be psychology based on some level, but I still couldn't figure it out. That was it. I was like, this is my university. I need to figure out what this man is on, what he's doing. How did he access that power? Where is it coming from? Especially for an atheist mind like mine. I wasn't, I had the Catholic influence of my mother's family, the Protestant influence of my father's, but none of that made me feel a connection to spirit. I mean, it was devoid of anything real in my body. Lots of superstition, things like that, and control and fear and shame and guilt, but I didn't really get the spiritual part personally. So when I tasted that so-called divine spiritual component of reality in that workshop, which to me also felt like I was could have been in a physics workshop or something, some kind of scientific experiment. I was hooked, and I then within 6 months had a visa for the US, had packed up everything, sold it in car boot sales, had attended a couple more workshops in Dublin, and went to live in the US and study with my teacher. And so that was a journey that then continued for, I'd say, being a student for a good 12 years, solid, hardcore. I mean, growing up in Northern Ireland, we take on a big chunk of world karma in my experience, because I work internationally now and travel to many countries all the time, work with many different cultural, religious cloaks. And Northern Ireland, we got our fair share, that's for sure. There's a lot of history, as we all know. So I had to do a lot of work. I had a lot of ego patterns, to put it lightly. I had a lot of blind spots that I had to look at, and do the eating humble pie and really consciously look at the effects of my actions, my thoughts, my emotions that they were having upon me, but also the world around me. And luckily I created like a Sangha, or a community within this work that was international, that of like-minded souls who were as hungry as me to transform themselves and ultimately go through a cellular purification process, which is what makes this work unique as a spiritual or psycho-spiritual process, is really what it is.
Jen,
Yeah.
I want to hear all that stuff, right? You and I are both from Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
And I know that, as you say, coming from that kind of atheist background, your parents not really enforcing religion on you.
Yeah.
But you can imagine not the average Northern Irish person, because I think there are, it's really changing here, as from doing the workshops here quite a few years. But did you, before you went along to the first workshop, had you had any other kind of spiritual experience, or were you like me, where it was like, anybody talking about crystals and anything that sounded anything like that just sounded bizarre? And for other kind of people who do that kind of stuff, what was your experience before that? And then come back maybe just to sort of continue.
Very similar. Yeah. I started to get a little bit intrigued. I mean, it's kind of laughable now, but I did have I was introduced to a woman. I was doing multi-level marketing companies back in the day. It was an aloe vera one. I'm sure you probably know it, but and through that met this beautiful lady who became a friend, who was very much into seeing like people's auras and and crystals, and I thought that she was cuckoo, but at the same time was intrigued. But it kind of felt like a bit of a fairy tale land, and it didn't take me deep. It didn't take me deep at all. It entertained my mind. It started to open my mind to other dimensions or realities. But the experience that I had, and I think I was very lucky, I have a very clever spirit that happened to just fall pretty quickly at 20 years old onto my opinion, one of the greatest methods to transform the self on the planet at the moment.
Yeah, I think, I think part of me is just, I suppose when you're on LinkedIn and things, and you're in a place like Northern Ireland that's so small. And, I was doing quite a bit of content on social media, and I was engaging with lots of people, and I still am. you know, like the word spirituality and spirit and everything else, you know, it's like, I don't, you know, I honestly at this stage don't care now that, you know, whoever's going to listen or want to engage or whatever, or the people that want to engage and find out more about that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I'm not here to kind of try and, you know, fix anybody or influence anybody, but, you know, I just find it really interesting, our relationship, maybe especially here in Northern Ireland, with that word, with spirituality and spirit and stuff, because, you know, I would have been the least kind of likely person to talk about spirit and spirituality before I had the experience with you and the workshop and the work. And I just think that it's a real pity. It's a real shame, because I think people, it sort of, it does people out of the opportunity to experience something really, really special. Um, you know, and it's just words. It's just words getting in the way of, you know, what we all have access to, I feel. And, you know, sometimes it just depends on the person articulating the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Could be the difference between somebody having a go. And if it hadn't been, you know, for Melissa, who introduced me to this with you, you know, he wasn't talking about it in any kind of, you know, kind of way that made it feel really weird or anything. It was just that this is just an experience. It's hard to explain, but it's going to allow you to tap into the reality of who you are, you know, the greater truth of who Dean is beyond what you think you are, and any pain and suffering that you're having, you know, that there'll be light that there will actually be light that will shine on that and burn that away and help you to feel lighter and help you to really feel excited and to know how to hear your deeper truth and your intuition, and that place inside us that
Mm-hmm.
guides us to create beautiful things, to write poetry, to create art, to have beautiful conversations, to invent things.
Mm-hmm.
And I, how could I not want to experience that? So it's just, you know, I
Mm.
suppose that's why I keep interrupting you. I suppose it's like, you know, we need to hear the end of that. We need to hear more about what happened when you know, you continued to work in America, and then what's happened since. But I feel, you know, right early on in this, because sometimes people don't listen beyond a few words to things. I want people to kind of just suspend their prejudice for a moment about words if they can, and ask themselves, are they feeling bad? Is there a niggle? Is there something that's making them feel just so trapped or uncomfortable or worried or fed up or suicidal or whatever? And
Mm-hmm.
just put the prejudice aside and just ask themselves, are they feeling that? And then just listen, and just listen to the opportunity through your work and other ways to just tap in, you know. And then maybe we could talk a little bit about then, you know, maybe my experience, and well, first we'll just finish talking a little bit more about what you were, you know, what happened next, you know, when you started doing your
Well,
groups and
I'd like to address what you're bringing
okay, good.
up, because, you know, I have to say I'm very proud of the Northern Irish part of me, particularly Northern Irish, not even Irish or British, but Northern Irish, because of our set of trauma.
Mm.
I'm very proud that within this so-called quote unquote spiritual realm that I work in, or psycho-spiritual realm, I consider myself a very no bullshit kind of girl. So I don't mess around, beat around the bush. If it's real, it's real. And if it's not, it's airy fairy, and I don't buy it. And that's something that I attribute to my Northern Irish upbringing. So there's a positive to
Mm.
that skeptical part of me that I
I agree.
inherited there. You know, Northern Ireland, and our people, we experience that spirituality as taboo. We're not the only culture,
Mm.
obviously, um, but it's pretty strong, like you're saying. There's a lot of fear around it, and the fear is there for good reason. It's fear based on experience, and whether that experience is direct, personal, with religion, you know, with dogmatic brainwashing, or with the war itself, which is connected to the dogmatic brainwashing on many levels. And also the fear of, and I'll go deeper with this in a second, but just before I get to that, because I'm pushing buttons, but basically for good reason, that's all I really want to emphasize, is that there is an attitude around spirit and spirituality in Northern Ireland that, on the one hand, I'm really grateful for, and on the other hand, it nearly killed me because, you know, it kept me level-headed and grounded in the world, and I will always have that, which makes it unique, actually, because there's so many airy-fairy people that are offering spiritual stuff that may be brilliant, but there's a cloak around it that doesn't do it any favors, and it doesn't help people trust it. So it creates mistrust. And you know, we Northern Irish people were really like on the ground, you know, wind your neck in, real kind of people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we go a bit too far with that at times. And the reason we go too far is because of our own trauma, that we're either not yet ready or able or capable of looking at, working on, or feeling, capital letters, feeling. So the other thing about the spiritual realms, when you hopefully manage to get past the bullshit and the dogma and the airy-fairy, if you can get past all of that, get down to the nuts and bolts of what you're going to have to do and the place you're going to have to go in yourself to open up that spiritual component of you, which has got nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with anything outside of you. Hasn't even got anything to do with the concept of spirit or spirituality that you're reacting to. It's actually this intelligence that you are. It's just simply a creative intelligence that you can call on privately on the toilet, if you like. Doesn't have to be in a church, a mosque, an ashram, or a spiritual hoo-hoo workshop. It's something that's inside of you. But we're not educated on that. We have not been educated on that. We've been traumatized. So our association and connection to the spiritual realm is trauma-based. And that has to be taken into consideration. And I don't treat it lightly. And I have deep respect for the taboo that's there. But I had to work through it in myself. I had to. I was kicked. I punched into it. And it radically changed my life to open up to that quadrant of myself that was being completely avoided. So as a holistic human being, you know, I got my mind and I got my feeling self, my emotions, and I have my physical body. But then I also have this unseen, intuitive, spiritual realm, or the intelligence of the universe that is here, whether I like it or not, or believe in it or not, or if I'm an atheist scientist or a Bible thumping Christian or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's here. So, you know, the way I basically look at it at this stage, still with my level head that I wonderfully adopted from my parents and Northern Ireland, is this is my relationship to the universe, to this unseen intelligence. I mean, you need to be a damn fool to look at this, the magnificence of the reality that we live in, the profundity of the human body and how it works, and not somehow have a little open mind to the fact that there's some sort of intelligence in this reality of ours that potentially not created it as if it's a creation myth, because I really don't believe in that type of way of thinking. I think it limits us, but that it's helping make it work. Whether you want to look at it as chi, life force energy. I think the Eastern philosophy, such as Taoism and Buddhism, they're easy for us Northern Irish to digest potentially, because they don't have as much bullshit in them, in my experience. But bottom line, this is an aspect of reality that if we strip off all the nonsense and develop a personal relationship with it, we have access to power, a clean power, a loving power. Once you get past your fear of love too, which Northern Irish people, you know, there's a lot of shame around that, but there's access to something quite brilliant.
You know, I suppose at this point, I'm kind of thinking, if we just talk a little bit about what I went through, my experience on the workshop, and then, you know, we could maybe talk a little bit more about, maybe you could describe what was actually happening there and why I was experiencing what I was experiencing, just so people can get a flavor of what it is that we're talking about. What is this work that we do, you know, that you do? So, you know, I have to try and think of the succinct way of describing this, to kind of, without and make sure I get it across with feeling, because it was so important to me. I don't want to miss the opportunity, but I suppose there was like two parts of it from what I can recall for me. There was, it was 2.5 days, with kind of like all evening on a Friday. And then I spent all evening that evening back at the house with everybody. So that kind of was a sort of an unofficial continuation of the experience, because you're with those people and you, and then the next day all day long, and then the next day all day long as well. So the Friday, Saturday and Sunday. I don't think that, my direct one-to-one sort of experience with you in the workshop happened until late on the Saturday evening. So I'd sort of been listening to people for a day and a half. So I'd been listening to everybody else's experience, and each person's experience was really, really different. Even the way that you interacted. Whenever I arrived in, we, there was beautiful music playing, and you were kind of meditating, and there was a few people around kind of just sitting quietly and being, with eyes closed or eyes open, and just relaxing and listening, and sort of almost like they were tuning in. And, I was excited. I was, it was really, really different to any experience I'd ever had before, even like yoga or whatever else. It was just, a circle. And so I went and sat and kind of followed everybody else's lead and listened. And then I just spent the next day and a half just hearing some serious stories from people, serious trauma. I'm not sharing anybody's name or any details, but, some serious, abuse and bad experiences that people had in their lives. And compared to me, I was thinking, oh my goodness, maybe, my stuff seems so small, but, then you asked me on the Saturday night, how are you feeling? And immediately my floodgates just opened. I wasn't feeling anything in particular moments before it. I was just listening. You asked me how I was feeling, and I just completely, it's sending shivers in my spine now thinking about it, but I never cried as hard as I did. And, I wasn't just crying, I was roaring, there was almost snots coming out, I was it was such a release. And I was just saying about how, I'm just exhausted. I remember just shouting, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted. I'm so fed up feeling like this. I didn't know what it was I was exhausted about, or what it was, a tired feeling it was, until, obviously we did the work then. And, but something, it wasn't my mind, because, it was something else that I was tapping into there really deeply, my subconscious spirit, as I came to learn. But that was like kind of like the one part of it, and then you did some work with me and we talked through some stuff. And then there was a bit where you kind of got me to, you invited some of the ladies and people, everybody there. Actually, there was a few guys there, to anybody who wanted to feed back to me their experience of me, which no one else. And it didn't, you didn't do that with anyone else, but it just seemed, obviously with your work, that's what you were led to do. And boy, that was intense, because I learned so much, because those people were so open-hearted and brave to share exactly what they felt about their experience of me. And, and I learned, what did I learn? That I suppose that I remember Goldie, somebody's, feedback to me was that I'm this puppy dog, sort of lap dog, almost like, happy, just really, being loving and kind and sweet and gentle and fun and all this positive stuff, but to the point of almost exhausting you by being in my company. It's nice at the start, like it would be with a puppy, but eventually it gets annoying. And he wanted to experience the lion in me, and that's really made a big impact on me. But I suppose the biggest thing that I've gotten through that whole experience was that I had been performing my whole life. Absolutely just not pretending, I didn't realize it, but I was being this open character, but only open to a certain point, that I was letting people see what I thought was a really good personification of the kind of guy I want to be. But what I really thought I was a dark asshole, like some really horrible person, whether that's because of, I don't know, what I was thinking about myself, but it was just that I was this darkness, really. And that what I learned was that I was neither. I wasn't the performance. I wasn't the darkness, although we do have dark and light, but I wasn't what I thought I was, this beast behind my shoulder or whatever, but that I'm actually light, and that I am love, and that I have love to give. And you taught me that, I have that we all have, but I have this gift of, I have love inside me and I have it to give. And I need to learn, through the work, how to sort of express that and bring that to the world. And, that just, I felt for the first time, I suppose, that I wasn't outside. I wasn't separate. I wasn't disconnected. I wasn't lonely. I felt like I was part of the world. Mm. And after that workshop, I didn't feel like myself. Actually, I need to let you speak now, but, a friend of mine who knows me really well, who's known me for maybe, as long as I've been married, like 20 years or together with Sonia, but a friend said that she sort of thought that I'd lost my sparkle, but she knew really well. She's really intuitive. She said, like, you seem to have lost your sparkle, but, like, you're not really this positive guy anymore the way you were, like on social media and stuff, that you're kind of a little bit more somber, a bit more serious. But she said that also that she didn't think that what was before was real, that she always felt that it was just exaggerated or put on or whatever, that it wasn't the real me, that it was masking a sort of a self-esteem issues and loathing and whatever else. And that now, even though I am maybe not as woohoo, it's easier to be around, mm-hmm. But it hasn't been easy to be around for everyone. It's been a tumultuous time since the workshop. There's been, for me, I have felt lighter and lighter as the days have gone on. Mm-hmm. But for others, that, some of the things that I've done maybe and decisions I've made haven't felt good for people close by, Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a long description of my experience, and that wasn't the full thing. Like, there's been so much more. But anyway, what do you think was going on there? What was going on there, Jen?
Well, I suppose to help the listeners understand what it is that I do and what we're talking about here, nuts and bolts, I've learned to work with the light, is one way of calling it, the intelligence of the universe, a greater mind, a greater intelligence than our own, the creator, whatever you want to personally call it. What happened with you, Dean, is your body got hit by that tremendous surge of expanding energy. Because ultimately, if you break it down, the universe is made of energy, which is either expanding or contracting. And the part of us that we're all seeking to kind of live in is the expanded part. And that's the part of us that is actually connected and in alignment with how our universe really works. And unfortunately, most of the mindsets and behavior patterns, cultures, religions, family systems that we're raised in create contraction. They literally contract energy, because a lot of it's rooted in fear. It's based on old trauma that's passed along ancestrally, epigenetically, that is stored in the body as cellular memory, stored in the individual body as cellular memory, and then the collective body, or the collective unconscious, as Carl Jung would have labeled it. And that's that contraction is what manifests as all sorts of our mental, emotional, physical issues. And the contraction causes pain, bottom line. And a lot of us are expressing who we think we are through a filter of contraction. And when you meet the light for the first time, you can call it the light, the universe, expanding energy, the big pink fluffy thing in the sky, whatever you want to call it. When it's your time, and that's really something that is really beyond our intellect. That's something between ourselves and the creator, divine timing, so to speak. When it's our time to wake up, usually there's some sort of crisis. There's an intensification of crises, like what happened to me. There's something traumatic, shocking happens that forces us to wake up, whether it's a cancer, a sickness, or a car crash, or a death of a loved one, or whatever it happens to be. And then we get the wonderful opportunity to wake up, but waking up can be very painful too. And that waking up is really where that expanding energy comes in finally and starts to clean out everything that is contracting energetically inside of us. And so whatever we have going on at the cellular level that is shutting us down, it's going to be brought out. It's going to be unearthed and excavated and brought out in the open. And that's precisely what happened to you at that workshop. So you'd been sitting cooking in the light in that expanding energy for the day and a half before you had your personal encounter with me in the healing process. But the catharsis and the tears and the overwhelming breakthrough that happened was actually physiologically like a dam of contraction that was being held inside of you that you didn't let go. And in its place, what takes its place then is that expanding energy, is the process of expansion in your life. So first of all, it happens cellularly in the space of 30 minutes or an hour or a weekend workshop, you know, and you embody that expanding energy at the cellular level, but then that has to keep ricocheting and rolling out into your life. So yes, any systems that you've set up, whether it's a job, a relationship, the way you parent, the way you talk to your friends, how you are on social media, if that was rooted in that contraction that the universe just came and brought a tsunami through and cleaned out of you, then the chances are they're going to crumble. And you're either not going to feel any energy in them anymore, meaning you're just going to feel like you're relating to death. Like it's just going to have, you're not going to be able to relate to it anymore. Or you'll lose your job or something. But those, you know, that sounds terribly negative. It's not always like that. In fact, I actually had the opposite experience after my first workshop. I just was on a high for 6 months, to be honest. But I know you experienced a lot of shattering, and that shattering is of the old vessel, the old casing, the old self that you've graduated from, that you're outgrowing. And then the next step is, okay, greater intelligence of the universe that I'm learning to relate to, which is the energy of expansion. I want more of you in my life. But the truth is, to get in alignment with the universe, with you, Great Spirit, or divine consciousness, or myself, to get in alignment with that expansion, I need to face fear. I need to be willing to face fear, because fear is what holds the contraction in place. So when expansion starts to push through and push against that contracted energy, you can be guaranteed that we're going to face fear, whether we like it or not. And depending on our relationship to fear, that reveals the tumultuousness or smoothness of what we go through in the months, years, decades to come. So it's a lot about the universe itself, the intelligence, the intuitive intelligence that came into my body, just like yours, and said, all right, it's cleanup time. Out of my way, contraction. All that old cellular trauma that you've inherited from God knows how many great grandparents, 50 generations down the road. Time to get you out, all the stuff that's causing the physical pain. What about those behavior patterns that walked Jennifer into a rape situation? Where's the blind spots that she had operating that got her there in the first place, et cetera, et cetera. Like I was just faced with myself, faced with my false self. Like what on all these behavior patterns and ways of being that were unconscious. That's a lifelong endeavor. It's not like I suddenly am perfect and I got it all sorted, far from it. But certainly the parts that were keeping me shut down to the point where I couldn't really be a world citizen. I was too shut down to just engage the world. I was not living my passion. So I had to do the work to clean out the closet, so to speak, of all the old clothing and all the old junk that really has nothing to do with me, that was epigenetically passed along, mostly from my ancestors and culture, resulting in me. And then me taking it on, plan it out as if it's me, unconsciously growing up in it and becoming it, and then experiencing the boomerang of it. You know, all these patterns and ways of thinking and speaking and behaving that I learned from my family and culture. But then I'm paying the price in some strange way for it all. And then I had to learn to own that, look at that, and clean it up. And not an easy process. You have to be brave. I mean, that's the quote unquote spiritual warrior term. But, you know, it takes bravery to look at the self and own our shit and own the shit that we've inherited from other people. And then not only own it and clean it up, but then there's a whole nother phase that kicks in on our path. And that is learning how to be responsible to what that language of energy, that expanding language of energy, is bubbling up through us in every moment, asking us to be responsible to it. So in other words, right now, what action can I take in this moment that is being responsible to the universe moving through me? In other words, to what's going to create expansion for me and everyone around me. And most of the time, if we're doing it right, it's going to scare the shit out of us.
So it's kind of like, I remember now you talking about that, actually in the one-to-one, the last one-to-one we had, where you were talking about that, where you listen deeply to what spirit is telling you or what your greater self is telling you. Mm-hmm. And you can either, if you listen to that and then do nothing, you've just, given up on a real opportunity. You've just missed something. Whereas if you listen, like I know you talk about some of the people in your close circles who live by this, where you feel something that just says, Dean, you got to do this. This is exciting you. This is something that's going to help you. This is something this is a decision that you need to take. And you just go, nah, because this will happen and that will happen. Then you just push away that light. And then whereas if you take the leap, the universe rewards you with more abundance and all that kind of stuff.
Can I piggyback on that before I forget it? Yeah. All you skeptical Northern Irish folks and anybody else listening that doesn't understand what God might be, that is God. That is the creator. That is it right there. That's spirit. That's the whole spiritual thing summed up. In other words,
that's what I feel. Yeah.
There is an intuitive intelligence that is always imprinting itself up through us all the time, right? The Taoists call it the Tao. And Eastern medicine calls it Qi, right? It's got many names, Kundalini, whatever you want to call it. But basically, it's the intuitive self, which can also be labeled the feminine, not female, not pink frilly dresses, but the feminine aspect of the universe, right? Yeah. There's a masculine aspect and a feminine aspect, if we want to look at it that way. And that intuition that we all have, when we are trusting it and in alignment with it and acting on it, that's the male, that's the masculine. The healthy male in us is the part that acts on that voice that's bubbling through. Then our life works. Everything works. We end up opening a channel and creative energy pours through us, whether we're artists or we're in the corporate world or we're in media and entertainment. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we're cleaning toilets in a hospital. There's this intelligent light that starts to pour through us when we live in alignment with that process within us. So typically speaking, stereotypically it's changing, but stereotypically men have kind of really muffled that. Like a lot of men, that old male that's really being challenged in the world at present in the Western world. And that old male patriarchal programming is very disconnected from the feminine, obviously reflected in our world burqa. But as we learn to, in other words, men are not as connected to their intuition as women would be. But here's the difference. Women, even though they're more intuitive and more aware, in other words, you kind of can read what's happening around you energetically. You can sense what somebody's thinking, et cetera, et cetera. You know what's right in any given situation, but women tend to not act on it.
So they're not doing the second part. So
yes, they have a weak male.
Okay.
A weak male, which then we become codependent on the external male to do that process for us, to be in the world and take action.
So we have, in simple, just looking at the simple picture of the two halves, if we do this work and we do, whatever work, whether it's, through you, which I recommend people do, or people find ways to do their own inner work, they get to hear that intuition. They get to hear that voice that tells them, look, this is exactly what is right for you, for your body, for your life, for you, for your true self. but it's the meal or whatever way you want to look at it. That's that,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
is the gift of actually when you take that action in
Yes.
that moment. Or it doesn't have to be that you do exactly everything that it's suggesting, but it's just, taking a note of that, or telling yourself, I am going to pursue that, or pick up the phone and make an appointment,
Mm-hmm.
something to do with whatever it was that you felt in your stomach. I remember you saying that, if when you feel it, take some sort of action, and then you will start to see evidence everywhere. You said, you'll see evidence in everything of this working, even in other people's success.
Mm-hmm.
Start to notice other people's success and other people's peace. When you start to see people and come across people that are really peaceful, there's something going on there where they have taken some action, whether they knew it or not. They were taking some action based on that intuition. And that thing you said, Jen, about the business, or about men, and about sort of, I suppose, Western man, and especially corporate Western man. We talked a little bit about this before we started speaking there,
Mm.
and it's something that plays on my mind a lot. It's like, I always feel like a bit of a weirdo when I start to bring up things like intuition and spirit and consciousness, and even maybe psychedelics, and just whatever, anything that kind of is to do with getting beyond the ego and getting beyond, I suppose, the humdrum, just go-getter, goal-oriented kind of talk that people tend to go for in the corporate world. And I just feel out of it. I feel so separate to it. And I'm not suggesting, part of me is judging. I can't deny that. It's like, are you guys are spending much of your time trying to tap into this source in you, tap into this intuition, tap into this creative force? Or is it all brute force, hard work, determination, discipline, all those other, excellent qualities? But are you missing this? Are many of you, are missing something that could really transform your business, or really transform your life with your children and your wife or your partner, and even transform the country in terms of politicians? How, is that, what do you feel? Is that
It's a disconnection from feeling, is what it's a disconnection from feeling, and ultimately a fear of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've deemed as kind of the macho man, or the man is strong, the less he feels, the stronger he is, in a sense. And that's because, look, you got thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years of war. It's not going to end anytime soon. If you're in that realm, you got to be numb. You got to be disconnected. If the innocence of a beautiful young male boy is raised and sent to war to mutilate and kill, then there's a severance, the feeling that has to happen. So that's continued for millennia. And that numbness is deeply rooted in the genetics and the DNA of the male body. And it plays out in the workforce. It plays out in how men relate to the world and themselves and each other and women, and how they work and the way they view the world. But ultimately, it's a disconnection from feeling. And it's a fear of feeling. Why? Because when you're going to, if, let's say, as a man, you got to start in allowing a softer, what's quote unquote the more feminine qualities of life, which would be that softer, more sensitive feeling approach, then as soon as you're going to open up to that feeling, you're going to have to face all that history of everything you have not been feeling. So best to just keep shoving it to the side, shoving it to the side, shoving it to the side, pretend it doesn't exist. But you can only do that for so long, even in the corporate world. And that's why things are starting to change now.
What are the repercussions? What do you see as being the repercussions of not tapping into that, and into feeling? Yeah, into feeling your feelings, for meals, and especially.
Tremendous. It's illness, disease, issues within relationships, separation within relationship, because to deny feeling is to deny the self. I mean, it's to deny one's own power and one's connection to your real passion and your real creative gifts in the world. And I've worked with thousands of people, and I see it all the time, that disconnection, it creates a shutdown, eventually becomes numbness. Then we reinforce the numbness and keep it there by drinking alcohol. Northern Ireland's one of the most alcohol-dependent cultures on earth.
Yeah.
I would safely say, being, having a fried liver myself for the first 20 years, that we're probably the most culturally dependent on alcohol. But, within the workforce, which is what you're bringing up, you know, ultimately it's going to change. I have full faith that it's already changing. And I think men deserve it. Men really need to overcome individually and collectively the taboo and the terror and the fear of their softer side or their feeling nature, and the potential to let tears flow, you know, uncontrollably at times if needs be. You know, it's healthy. It's healthy. And you know, I see it. It's so-called brave to not feel, but in that process of not feeling, the amount of people I work with, men and women, whose fathers abused them as children in one way or another, with a physical beatings or sexually or whatever, all over the world. I work with people from all over the world. And it's the same thing. If there's a severance from feeling and owning the vulnerability, as a man, I'm vulnerable. I'm vulnerable. No,
Yeah.
I'm not vulnerable, but all those feelings that I'm not feeling get then transferred, projected, you dissociate from them, and then they get transferred onto those around you, your loved ones, and that becomes abuse.
Yeah, I feel that so strongly, and to me, it just feels like the bravest thing in the world. I'm not sort of just saying that because I like to spill my guts all the time, but you know, look at me, Mr. Brave. But I feel like it is the most courageous thing to do, because you do, I mean, especially here and especially on somewhere like LinkedIn or whatever in the corporate world, and you start to spill your guts or even just express fear and worry, but genuine worry, like genuine, like discomfort and pain and whatever else. I think that, you know, obviously when you do that, then there are people that are watching or listening to that. They may not say anything, but they're at home or they're in their work or they're in the relationship, and they hear you saying it out loud, and all of a sudden they start to feel a little bit of courage about it, expressing that as well. You know, and if you're the leader of a corporate organization with hundreds of staff, and you were to be the person to stand up and go, I am so fucking sad, or I am so lonely, or I feel so numb, and
I am so sorry for where I messed up in
yeah,
that.
I
Making
really,
oneself vulnerable.
yeah, and I want to do something about it. I want to do something about it. I'm going to do something about it. But it starts with me just saying that this is how I feel. And then can you imagine the impact that that would have on the other people that are in that organization that are maybe struggling, and that their leader has had the courage to stand up and say those things, but that's not gonna stop that person from being productive and from keeping on going with their company. If that's the right thing for them, you can still admit to vulnerability, still admit to having really confusing and weird and dark and thoughts, and still being incredibly creative.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, but it's a fine line to own one's vulnerability and not give one's power away. And I think
Okay, that's interesting. I want to hear more about that.
A lot of people are afraid that, you know, there's this instant, no, I will not do that because here's proof. Here's the proof of my childhood and growing up years and what happened yesterday. Well, where when I even think of remotely making myself vulnerable, then I get laughed at, I get ridiculed, you know, I am seen as weak. I'm not taken seriously. You know, there's unfortunately that stigma and attitude.
So how do you protect yourself?
But there's another way, and that's a lot of what I teach is empowerment structure of really backing yourself up. And backing yourself up is a multifold process, because to be vulnerable when it's called for, when it's actually, there's energy in it. Say, I use this expression.
Okay.
When there's energy in it, then do it. In other words, if it's going to create expansion. But there's times where you may share a feeling with a person, a workforce, whatever it happens to be, but it creates contraction, or it's not right. It's not the right thing to do necessarily. Then you're going to create a boomerang in some way. So it's also about really learning that language of energy, learning what is what I'm doing, creating expansion or contraction. Because sometimes, like I said, if you express yourself and you're making yourself vulnerable, but you're doing so around individuals who don't have the eyes and ears to hear you, or they will take advantage of you, then that's in a way a blind spot of self-abuse. that will keep reinforcing that pattern of, I can't make myself vulnerable. It's not safe. It's not safe.
Ah, yeah,
But the
okay.
same is true in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
If it is being called for, and the highest action that would create the greatest expansion for all involved is to, in that moment, just
Express.
right, I surrender. Here's what's really going on, and
Mm-hmm.
I encourage you all to open up and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And if that in that moment feels like it would bring a surge of energy through for everyone, and you don't do it, there's also a cost.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a fine line. And I think a lot of us, we need to, that's why I advocate more than anything. The bottom line of what I offer and what I learned is, it's time to learn the language of energy, the intuitive language of energy.
Yeah.
Our ego programs us into compartments of right and wrong, and we quickly adapt. The ego adapts. If we do something in the playground when we're 12 and we get shamed and shunned, the ego mind will say, to protect ourselves, I'm never going to do that again. That's wrong. That's bad. So I'm never going to share that part of myself again, for example.
Yeah.
And we need to heal the compartmentalization that takes place and learn that there's a greater Tao, or a greater flow of chi, that martial artists work with. It's what the samurais knew. It's an ancient wisdom, and it's ours to tap into. And when we get in touch with it, we're getting in touch with a power that nobody can mess with. And that covers the full spectrum of feeling, and both genders, or all genders, should I say, since there's multi-gender now.
Yeah.
And husband. But basically, it's a power. It's the power of knowing exactly what to do in any given moment that is going to create the greatest expansion of love. And that takes time to learn. And you got to unlearn the opposite.
Yes. Okay. Now, I think we're on to something there. I mean, that it's not about these just grand gestures. It's not about massive leaps that are just terrifying all the time. It's about practicing like any kind of exercise. It's like to grow this, strengthen this muscle, this intuitive muscle to, if that's going to appeal to the more alpha male type who maybe is afraid of being totally vulnerable just yet. It's more like, okay, it starts with just learning these skills from you, for example, and going to a workshop or having a one-to-one and just learning the right questions to ask you or yourself, how to speak to yourself, how to speak to your greater self. Like you do this practice, I know that you spend a lot of your day just talking out loud to your inner self, to your greater spirit. And I've adopted that as well. And I find that if you're the most skeptical person and you just stop right now, I find, if I've told a few friends to do this, just when you're on your own, especially, just talk about the thing that's bothering you. Just talk about it. Just speak and speak and speak. Just talk about the thing that's happening. Ask the questions, and then let the answers come and start saying those answers out loud. You get different answers than what you would have if you just try to sit and think about it. So like even that to me is proof of just this whatever that's going on. And I suppose by talking to you and learning from you, that opportunity to really know what to do with your children, with your spouse, with any particular situation, to do with, should I even spend any energy at all thinking about this thing in the future? Or can I just totally trust and surrender that as each thing comes up, if I practice this skill, I know what to do when the time comes. I don't need to decide. And I know I talked to you a lot about a particular decision that I was trying to make. And the whole time I was trying to make that decision, it was just pain on either side of the decision. Whereas when I did what you told me to do and just talk to spirit and just relax and stop trying to work it out, just surrender.
With your head. Yeah.
Yeah, with my head, and just talk to spirit or talk to my inner self. That when the time comes, that the words, the actions that I need to take would all become clear. And I feel some parts of me are still clinging onto some things that stop me from maybe having courage in some respect, but I think it's guided me. It's guided me because I am where I'm supposed to be right now. That's what I feel. And then, if I was closing myself off, I wouldn't feel as much peace as I'm feeling. I would still feel, oh, there's, underlying thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, anyway, I'm kind of drifting off there a little bit, but
Just to pull it back there, that
yeah.
whether no, and thank you for everything you're sharing. It's great. But on a particular point, we have what we call lesser mind, which would be, and it's not a judgment of the profound intellect that we human beings have, but ultimately the brain, our intellect, this
Mhm.
knowledge that we have, mental knowledge, is one kind of intelligence. It's not all intelligences. I mean, there are multiple intelligences,
Mhm.
musical intelligence, artistic intelligence, spiritual intelligence, emotional, intellectual, mathematical. But there is a greater intelligence, you might call it the spiritual intelligence, that exists according to
Mhm.
Taoist philosophy in the center, which is in one of the centers called the Dantian, just
Yeah.
below the belly button in the body. That's greater mind or greater intelligence. It's a creative intelligence. It's what Einstein talked about. It's
Mm.
what wrote the symphonies by those incredible Viennese composers. It is the profound majesty in life, and it's a greater intelligence than the limited capacity of our ego mind. And
Mhm.
we get in a lot of trouble and create a lot of problems for ourselves when we identify entirely and mostly with just lesser mind, and we build our political structures and economical structures through and on that lesser mind structure. So who's the smart one? If you really want to brush off and judge and laugh at and kind of give the finger to the so-called feeling, intuitive, soft, sensitive, spiritual intelligence in reality, kind of just brush it off as for wimps, or pussies. Well, who's the full, because you got you got a greater intelligence that you can access, that really is the nuts and bolts of what's creating all the beautiful things here anyway. And you might as well learn to develop a relationship with it. Why not even learn to develop an intimate relationship with it, where it
Yeah.
becomes your primary boss or your therapist or your primary relationship, your primary lover, and you end up learning to put that thing first, as not some far off on a pedestal with a white beard concept, but this creative juice, this chi that's moving through the Tao
Yeah.
of life that is inside of you, that you might have been taught to fear, but actually it's your greatest ally. And when you learn to work with it, it has a greater intelligence than yours, whether you like it or not. And one of the greatest things that healed me was realizing that my head doesn't know everything. In fact, it knows very little. And the
Mm.
more I realized that actually it's the universe in me that has the greater wisdom. And I've learned then, but my job is to keep getting out of the way of it. How do I, like
Yes.
my whole last 18 years of my life is, how do I get out of the way of greater intelligence? And so I'm
Mm.
getting out of the way to the point where it's coming through, all the time, working with people all over the world on Zoom every day when I'm home and traveling and being invited to do workshops everywhere. And because I keep getting out of its way so it can come through and do its work through me.
Yeah.
I just happen to do it in the spiritual realms, but people are doing it in film and business and all kinds of arenas. So it's a wise thing. It's actually a brave thing. It's something to be very proud of, to learn to get out of the way and do that. And I actually know a lot of men now, the world over. I'm working with medical doctors internationally, and some of them are some of the most beautiful, feeling, brave, wise men that you could possibly meet,
Mhm.
because they're in that realm of where it's not okay to XYZ, but they're doing it. They're pioneering. They're like, I'm burnt out. I've had enough. I need to,
Yeah.
there's more to this life than this
Mm.
mundane material level. Come on, like just start incorporating it in. It is science, in my opinion. There's no separation.
Yeah. Like even if you just, forgot the last hour of our conversation here and just looked at it like that, strip away all the words and just go, okay, like it's pretty obvious to all of us that there's more to our brains even and more to ourselves than just this bit here. And this is all we're talking about here is tapping into, like, I mean, if you already are a creative person, already are a productive entrepreneur, an artist or whatever else, if you just learned how to tap into this, I mean, every entrepreneur, every product designer, every creator, every artist, whatever, already knows that they're getting inspiration from somewhere
Yes,
to
exactly.
be creative, to solve problems. It's not just here. So if
Mm.
they learn these skills more openly, more they embrace this opportunity, what else could they achieve? So I want
Exactly.
to, yeah, I want
Exactly.
to.
Sorry, before you just say that, they
Sorry.
say we only use 10% of our brain or whatever the
Mm,
statistics are. What would we be capable if we used more of our brain? Okay, that's one way of looking at it. You know,
yeah.
and I think it's bigger. It's like we only use
Mm,
10% of this brain, but I think if we're looking to this brain to
or
use
too much.
find
Yeah.
more, the other 90%, I see it more as, well, maybe we need to open up to the greater brain, the
Hmm.
brain that's in the gut, which is a
Yeah.
reflection of greater mind, greater
Hmm.
intelligence in the universe, which is also a reflection of the feminine. And the more that
Yes.
we, men and women, learn to embrace greater mind, you're going to see
Hmm.
women being more liberated on earth. It's a fact,
Yeah.
because they equate to one another. It's not saying
Yeah.
women are God and men are separate. That's nonsense. It's that we men and women we're both genders are suppressing that greater intelligence in the self. And as we learn to open up to it, which is the innate feminine aspect of God or the universe, and we
Hmm.
start to put it first in our lives, learn how to speak from that place and live from that place and act from that place more, women will be more liberated. It's inevitable.
Yeah, us talk a little bit about that because I was about to sort of ask you about children and our relationship with our children. And I was, we did talk a little bit about the Me Too campaign, but we didn't get chatting about it too much. But I've been thinking about that video you shared from
Mhm.
and Natalie Portman,
Mm.
and in the video, she talks about how from the age of 13, obviously she was in Leon, the professional, when she
Mhm.
was 12 or 13. So she was just obviously going through, puberty and whatever,
Yeah.
starting to become a woman. And of course, the media were just totally fixated on that aspect of her body, her changes. She mentioned something about how there was a countdown on some radio station to her 18th birthday because that would obviously be the time when it would be legal to bed her, as she put it in her words. And it made her cover up her whole life. It made her make choices in films because she didn't want anyone to see that part of her, that sexual part of her, that because it made her feel unsafe. It made her feel like just she was made to feel unsafe in her own skin. And I
Yeah.
just wonder, I mean, it really hit me that, because I've got a daughter and,
Mm.
you know, how have it made me, I was asking these questions out loud earlier on, actually. I was saying, how have I treated women? How am I treating my wife? How am I treating my daughter? How am I treating the women that I look at as I go down the road and interact with on a daily basis, and even online and different things, how, and the way that I communicate with my fellow male friends. I even had this chat with my best friend Des here. I sort of said to him, Des, what do you think? How could we sort of be ambassadors for, a change in the consciousness about women without being complete bores, without being dickheads about it, without sort of just telling all our male friends off about sharing, we share photos, we share all these memes and things, whatever. But sometimes those things are so on the edge of
Yeah.
being, and
Vulgar.
I just said, look,
Hmm.
let's just try and like not send each other shit like this that's so misogynist and derogatory. Even though it's funny, it seems funny and whatever else, there's something not right there. And it's okay for us to say that. It's okay for us to go, look, nah, I don't want that, because I have a daughter. I also am a male. What is it doing to the male psyche? What have we been doing to ourselves by the way we've been treating women? Can you talk on that?
Well, I think it's beautiful what you just said. And that, kudos to you and your friends for having even the awareness, which is that
Mm,
intuitive awareness of the funny
mm-hmm,
feeling that's being created
mm,
anytime you go there.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we're hitting two birds with one stone there, because
Kids.
you as a man, you're aware that something's off. Whatever
Mm-hmm,
that funky off wobble is,
mm-hmm,
anytime you giggle at a joke or you laugh at something, or you share something with someone that you just have that feeling like, ew, this is something funny here.
mm,
Well, that ew and that deeper feeling is the feminine, separate from female. You know, you could be down, you could be having that experience with a guy, you know, some sexual thing with a guy, but still feel that funny feeling. That's the feminine that I'm speaking of, that deeper intuitive awareness. So really, I think that this Me Too campaign, or if there's anything men can do at present to help or assist, is just start trusting your deeper feelings more. Start trusting when something feels off and you kind of have known it all along. Bring it from the background of your consciousness, way, way back there, down deep, where like no other men are talking about it, you know, peer pressure, right? Be the brave one, be the warrior, and say, all right, guys, just wanted to share this. You know, something feels a little funny about this right now. Even if you don't have clarity on what it is or why, just bring
Let's
it.
just try something. Yeah.
Bring it out in the open. Get discussion moving around it. I mean, that's what Mankind Project, you know, people I know that are part of that really encourages men to get in touch with their feelings in a manly way, in a clean way, not a empowering way.
It already makes you squirm, even just saying like in touch with your feelings, but you know, not me necessarily, but you can imagine, you know.
Yeah. And actually it takes, well, if you think about it, you know, again, there's nothing wimpish about it. It takes an incredible amount of courage to stand out in the middle of the crowd.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen more and more. And like, I really appreciated what you just said. Like, you can feel it. Thank God you can feel it. There's a lot of men that can't even feel it. And a lot of women who can't feel too, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you can't help feeling your ego already hears you know, you saying, you know, well done, and you know, recognizing that, and me even hearing myself say the words, and you can't help but think, geez, you know, that's a bit not slimy or like slick or something, but just a guy saying stuff that sounds supportive of female. That's the thing. It's not just that you're, as a male, afraid to maybe say something a bit different or to recognize that icky feeling or whatever or that feeling that's underneath. It's also how it comes across when you be supportive, when you start to speak like this. And I think that is the courage. You just got to take that. You just have to try it on for size even, you know. I actually felt good to say it. So I'm going to say it more. I'm going to see what it feels like, because I even just want to ask the question, you know, how does it feel? How does it feel when I don't know, when I, yeah, you know, it's even though what am I feeling, or what is the impact on me when I, you know, look at, like, I mean, I'll be honest, like, you know, if you look at most guys' WhatsApp groups, there will be talk about, you know, channels on telly that they'll all watch, or they'll send some really full-on hardcore porn type thing, just as shocking as possible, you know, and a lot of it will be like pretty aggressive sometimes, and I don't mean like beatings but I mean aggressive sex and aggressive this, that, and the other, and it's always, you know, we won't be talking about it in these terms with each other, that it's quite misogynist. It's just like, whoa, like we'll even say sometimes, like, you know, I don't want to see that, but we're not really saying it with any strength. Right. And I wonder, what is it doing to us? What is it doing?
Your power away. It's taking your power away. It's taken away a whole aspect of power that has been deemed as weakness. You're under a massive brainwashing. The male psyche is under massive conditioning, that a whole realm of power that's available to you men in the male body has been deemed and just labeled as weakness. And it's shamed and put down and ridiculed and laughed at. It's mirrored in homophobia. I mean, that's it summarized in homophobia. Like, just you've been terrorized away from a whole level of power. That power has been misinterpreted as weakness. And when men start realizing that there is a power in that realm of feeling feelings, learning how to feel them and how to own them, being okay with a level of vulnerability, you heal a whole host of physical illness and disease issues, let alone mental, emotional, and relationship issues, and hardness that is cloaked men like armoring for centuries, millennia. So it's taking your power away. To objectify the female is a reflection of objectifying the feminine inside yourself. And that feminine is a metaphor for the part of you that can feel. And when you're intuitively capable of feeling the world around you, you're connected to the world around you. You're no longer disconnected. But you can't be connected to your world or yourself if you don't feel. So there's a power in being able to feel. And because when you can feel, then you have the power to connect. And then you have the power to feel at one and to know exactly what the right action is for you in any given moment. I can tell you now, the image of like those 90 or 100-year-old little martial arts men with long beards and long hair, 10 big macho men come and try to knock him out, and I can guarantee you that those individuals who have mastered that chi have mastered the art of feeling. That's a power.
Of course.
They're not separate. So you're not doing yourself any favors to objectify the feminine, the female, feminine, that nature inside of you.
Yeah, I mean,
much better to back her up. You would do much better to learn how to respect her, because then you have a metaphor for respecting that part of you.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go a little bit, more deeply into that idea of being all one and all that kind of stuff, that might be hard for some people to want to listen to even. But let's just say, just for the sake of argument, that it's a fact that we're all one. Let's just play with that. I feel that. I know you feel that. So like if you are, disrespecting and objectifying the feminine or the female, you're just doing that to yourself, and then what I'm thinking a lot about at the minute, which is kind of bringing it back to where I was going originally with this, was, with my children and with my daughter especially, but, with my son too, because he's going to be the one that's, well, whether he's, straight or gay or whatever, how I am and the silences and stuff in between my words, my actions and my energy and how I feel and how I treat any female around us, that they get to witness me, and even I suppose I've just sort of had a separate kind of connected thought there. If I'm looking at stuff that my friends have sent me, that is affecting my feelings. That's affecting how I am in the moment. If they happen to walk in on me and I've just received a message and I've got that in my brain just there and then, that's the energy that I'm carrying. Whereas if I'm looking at something, if you go onto Instagram and you see all these accounts of people creating this beautiful art with the male, or the masculine and the feminine combined, even some of it's quite sexual, but it's so powerful. It's like, it's balance. It's not about dominance. It's not about suppression. It's about the fucking huge energy that's created by two human beings combining their energy, and it's like they're all part of the universe, and like I get energy off that. I feel like, whoa, and I've experienced it in your workshop. I've experienced it with some of those individuals that were part of your world and my world, but through that workshop, moments where there's been eye contact, just silence, pure silence with another human being, and the feeling you get from that's much more enjoyable and expansive and powerful and all sorts of things, compared to just the simple, like, whether it's gratification or amusement at something that, I don't know, that gives me nothing. And I think it's just, how do you, the balance between sort of being a bit of a dick with your mates and saying, nah, guys, I don't want to see all that. But I said it today, so it's, that's fine. And as you say, the warrior, I don't think that warrior would have really enjoyed looking at that sort of stuff, or would have just seen that as being a complete distraction from his.
Well, also, men don't have healthy role models. There's none anywhere in society, really, that I see of publicly. I'm sure there's individuals out there listening to this who've had incredible male role models. If you had your lucky in terms of this particular issue that we're talking about. So, for example, I was really lucky. The teacher that I had could have been seen as a very masculine male, very big bone, big body, strong, white American male, and, had done a lot of very male things in life, like, used to dive with no tanks for 90 feet and swim with sharks, and, was very male in the world. And was in the military during Vietnam and things like that. And so would gain respect from that world, that masculine world, but at the same time had taken the time to develop, learn to connect with, develop, own, and master working with his feminine. So when you observe, for example, in workshops or in life, where I often saw, let's say, for example, a guy or a couple of guys saying something to a female that was present, that was derogatory or had an element of a put down in it, or a sexual dig of some sort, and to then have that macho male say, hold on a minute, that's not okay. Like that's, you were just totally going past her energy right there. Like you just took the power away from her.
Right.
See that you're doing that. And, I'd like you to take that back and apologize, or really own that and look at where you're coming from in yourself. So you boys, men, grew up with that as boys to men, and had healthy role models of men that hadn't given up their malehood, so to speak, but also were not afraid to back up the energy, which means backing up what's healthy and what's clean. And the other so when you have a lack of that and your role models are the opposite, then you're going to feel incredible peer pressure. And you're just going along like a sheep with the herd, and you're going to follow the master. And the other point I wanted to raise before I forget is, in that objectification that men participate in, it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword or a self-fulfilling prophecy, because within objectification is this hardcore need to fuck, basically. So the reason that I've observed, I've done a lot of tantric sexual work in my career and life too. And I've observed that, men, because of that disconnection from their own feminine, not femininity, it's very different, from that feeling intuitive self. When men are disconnected from that, they need to fuck harder. As a metaphor, both sexually and in all areas of life. You need to push the river, you need to push against life, you need to force and make life happen. And in the bedroom and with women, you need to fuck harder, basically, to feel something. Because there's a lack of feeling. There's a lack of feeling in the penis. There's a lack of feeling in the prostate. It's the source of prostate cancer. There's a lack of feeling. And when you're not sensitive, you don't have that electricity moving through the cells of your body that can have you taste a profound tantric bliss, where you can just touch a person, you can touch your partner in love, and have an orgasm that races through your soul and takes you into great highs and satiates your organs. And instead, you're having to bang against something over and over again. And that's the metaphor. Really.
Bang. Do you know what? That's a pretty powerful little piece there, because, I know, if I had some meals, Irish meals, especially Northern Irish meals, just even, people that I've spoken to, I know that this is a big thing, and it's like, it's not, myself and Des will have really good conversations about this stuff. Des is very open. He's really, he comes from a real background of, he's a country boy from Monaghan, really manly man, real father, real strong father figure, but he's really tuning in. He's really trying. He's really working hard to learn about that side of him. And, but like we would have those kind of conversations about, it's kind of divergent here, but digressing, but there's a woman that I've spoken to before that I want to try and get on the podcast, who, I can't remember her name, I think her name is Dee. She calls herself a sexological body worker. And her job basically is what you're talking about, is to help couples and individuals to feel more, to feel their bodies more, to realize their whole body has that potential to feel. I think that it's such we should talk again and have a whole separate conversation about this. I think it could get really, really interesting, because it's a hard one to sort of, articulate for a Northern Irish meal, even though I am half Italian, so it's a little bit easier. But I think it's fascinating. That's a really fascinating thing you bring up there, because I think that's possibly why maybe 90% of relationships fall apart, because the man is not getting enough
And,
that kind of
and if,
sex,
yes, exactly. Or
or
the
they
female's
think that's intimacy, or the female. Yeah.
not, the
So
female's
either way, huh?
or
Pardon?
the, both parties are not getting enough connection,
Yeah. Yeah.
real connection in the body.
And even that, that really excites me to have this kind of conversation continued, because it's like, as openly as possible. It's like to just to discover what is possible if you were to, geez, make it more of a priority to know what's in here
Yes.
and out there, if you know what I mean. Like what can we do as males, as females, to,
Mm-hmm.
what are the different ways to be intimate, to connect, to feel more, to
And
experience more of each other, huh?
and what do we have? And the most important question: what do we have to face and unlock and move through in ourselves in order
Yeah, and deal with, yeah,
to
yeah.
reawaken feeling again?
Mm-hmm.
Because for me personally, as I was going through my cellular purification process or my Kundalini awakening process,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of this trauma, what I've observed in my career in life is that the main trauma that we store in our bodies seems to be in the pelvis, seems to be in those first
Mm-hmm.
chakras. It's where the hardcore dark night of the soul stuff seems to
Mm-hmm.
be in the sexual organs predominantly.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of healing to be done there, a lot of healing. And
yeah.
what I had to face in myself to unlock the old ways, the way I was programmed to relate to men as a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And we women have a whole host of our own stuff to heal and own and look at. And
Mm-hmm.
all my own personal experience of rape, as well as then definitely ancestral and cultural and global connection to that feeling, and what I had to move through and face in myself, and victim consciousness and blaming men and being angry at men and having to own the healthy part of that anger and own the part that was blaming and do all that work. And then for men, I had to come through all that myself. And most of the time I would have rather run for the hills. There were plenty of times when I was going through my own sexual healing where the terrors I had to face were shocking. The fear that was unlocking in my body as a female or human, to face what I had to in order to open up sexually and unlock the shame and everything, blind spots up the wazoo. But then now, as I I've helped men and help men who work on their own stuff. It's quite remarkable. I think that a lot of the issues men have is they're looking for connection within disconnection. So, I mean, women have that problem too, but speaking just of men right now, there's the deep want for connection. There's like a cellular knowing, like a soul knowing of what that connection is. But if the cells of your body are cloaked with history, if you're still wearing trauma from your childhood, if you're still numb, and it's almost like having many layers. It's like be literally like wearing 5,000 condoms and trying to have sex and feel something. I mean, that's what it would be like. And you have to learn how to take all that off. The penis is carrying a lot of numbness right through to the prostate and all the way up
Yeah.
through, and the pubic bone and that whole surrounding area. And so even when we're feeling really horny and there's that supercharged porn-like fucking energy, it can exacerbate and continue to create more numbness. And that's often what it does. It's just it's numbness compounding upon numbness. And real connection, which is what Tantra offers, usually, not always, but proper Tantra, like real connection is a process of opening up to feeling. Like you're going to have to learn how to feel. So if you want to stop fucking women and metaphorically the feminine, which is yourself, it's that part of you that knows how to connect and knows how to feel in the bedroom, in your career, in your relationships with your children, and in life in general. So you're going to have taken the time to become a feeling being you're not a pussy and you're not a wimp, and it's not a light endeavor. I work with men, have done so for a long time. Even my current partner, like the bravery it takes to take in the feminine, to take in a woman, to let her be in her power, to take in that truth and trust and deeply trust and allow the body to go through a release, and then start to learn, oh, right behind that, when I trusted the universe and let it heal me and open me up to more feeling and heal that numbness, right behind that is this most insatiable, delicious connection, which is what I've been really looking for in all the porn in the first place.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, the thing that jumps out at me there is if you're too focused on the words, again, the same as spirituality, the word spirituality or the word great spirit or the word universe or whatever, if you get too feckin' hung up on those words, you don't get to go down this beautiful path towards like what feels amazing, this freedom, this connection, this power, this creativity inside you. And when you focus too much on the words, the two chakras and my sexual organs and the prostate and the penis and sex and fucking.
I have to interrupt. Yeah, I hear you, because you keep bringing it up over and over. But you know what I have to say to that? If anybody's thinking that way, I say just get bloody well hung up on them. Get hung up on them. You know, just go into it anyway. Be taboo and scared of the words.
Yeah.
You know, just get hung up on it. Do something different with your life for a change. You know.
Actually, you said to me before.
I moved to America when I was 21, and I moved in with a bunch of people that used to use this terminology. And I, honest to God, for the first 2 or 3 years, I had that lingering feeling of this is all cuckoo and they're all quacks. And everybody in America is so open and blah, 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 and had all this judgment. And it took quite some time to realize it was the judgment of that in myself. Mm-hmm. It was my own old male. It was my own patriarchal self that was judging something. It's also, elements of it are a bit airy-fairy and fair enough, and it comes back into balance. But just get hung up on them, you know? I mean, words are words. You're going to have to get past it at some point.
You're right. That's probably my hang-ups coming through there from before. But, you know, before we came on, I said, you know, I was nervous and excited and my stomach was flipping and everything. I was talking to you offline or whatever. And you said, good. You know, you're excited because I was nervous, because I was scared or whatever, you know, because then you felt like there's energy in that. There's some, and you can feel your body when there's energy. You can feel it. You can feel the not to get too carried away with that for a second, but something that we've been on for quite a while. I'm conscious of your time, and maybe one more little thing before you go. This idea of, you know, that I've been thinking a lot about, you know, the models that we are for our children, and this idea of our, you know, I've pictured this, you know, this idea of my cup being filled, you know, that if I'm giving away all my energy, and then, you know, I suppose I'm thinking about it more in terms of like when we become the victim or a bit martyred, you know, like this shit that, why have I got this life? Why is this life happening to me and everything else, you know? And then, you know, having the courage to kind of step away from whatever that is that's causing you to feel that. But you think that you should keep going. You think that you should keep doing whatever that thing is that's making you feel that way because you've got kids, because it seems like the right thing to do. Keep on working in that shitty job. Keep on feeling trapped in a relationship. Keep on not trying something alternative to normal medicine because it seems a bit woo-woo. Keep on doing the same old thing because it seems like this is the right thing, and that bit seems, that way seems wrong. And then, so you think that you're teaching your kids good things by teaching them to be resilient. Keep on plugging on, keep on sticking it out, you know. But actually, all you're doing is teaching your kids to grow up exactly the same way and live this half life, and to be, to just put up with, to just bear life, instead of what you're talking about, feeling your whole body, being connected to somebody, having this, tapping into this other part of us that teaches us how to create and to make beautiful things and to have beautiful experiences with people, and to feel excited when you hear music and express with your whole body. And, you know, you know, it's like we're doing it the other way around. We're upside down. We're all around, you know. It's like, how can, you know, what do you feel about that? You know, is that, how do you talk to your kids? Like, I know your two kids a little bit. I met Kamaya, and I've experienced your daughter online, just this sort of, just this joy and lightness that the two people have that are your two daughters. You know, what way do you express this to them? How do you, is it just your actions?
I guess the nuts and bolts is I've learned not to take their power away from them. Part of that's an attitude, mental attitude. The other thing is me owning my emotions as their parent. It's also seeing them as autonomous individuals and not possessions. I think
What? Sorry.
Seeing them as autonomous individuals and not possessions. Also seeing them as wise souls who, they might be children now, but they are adults in children's bodies too. And, part of not taking our children's power away from them is, first of all, having the capacity to hear and really listen. Really listen. You got to get past yourself. You got to be humble, out of your own way, and not come at them with this authoritative attitude of, I know more than you, and I'm the older, therefore I am the authority figure. Those belief systems are so traumatizing to every one of us. They were to you, they were to my parents, they were to me, and they are to children that are currently experiencing them. I see the trauma, and I see and work with the trauma of those attitudes all the time. There's another way. It's recognizing that, we're equals, but there's also this movement right now of people who are up in arms about, the millennials have, been given too much freedom and too much leeway, and they've got attitude problems. And, well, why do you think our parent generation of parents decided to try something different? Because we were so burnt by how we were treated and really seen and not heard. And discipline, there's a lot of, in Ireland alone, the church and the rape and it incessant. And so there's a reason why we let the pendulum swing and try to do it different. Like, let's see if we can give our power back to the kids and not take it away from them unnecessarily. It may have swung a little too far and needs to come back to balance, but the bottom line is this. It's a two-way street. And the sooner you treat your child as a human being and not a possession, and you don't give this attitude that you're better than, they will respect you. And so there's been many times where my girls, stepdaughter, daughter, have to give me feedback. And I'm not perfect. I have issues. So they give me feedback. And I've learned to, when they speak and say, okay, Mom, when you said that to me the other day, it really hurt my feelings. And I felt like the tone of voice that you're using is really strong. And, in fact, just in the last 24 hours, both of them feedback. And I can feel the reaction come up at first, as we all do. The ego reaction wants to, but it's learning to just, okay, let's really hear what they're saying and listen and take them in and apologize and say, okay, thank you. You're absolutely right. At the same time, that's not a formula. Like I talked about compartments of the ego. That's not a formula. It doesn't mean that you become a passive walkover and every time your child.
That's the thing.
The child mind is very smart. We have a very brilliant mind, even at year and a half, 2 years old. It's a phenomenal intelligence in there too. And it'll grab on. If you are too weak, it'll grab on. So there's times I remember a few years ago where Kamea, bless her heart, I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, when she's 18, she'll come.
Look forward to asking her.
But basically where, as I was like, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing that with me, honey. And I really hear you and I'm going to work on that behavior in myself. Thank you. And then the next day out comes something else. And I just knew there was no energy in it. Like it was not for me. It was really clear that was her issue. And it was a clever projection kind of coming through. So I had to delicately learn to treat that a different way and help her see where she was coming from. So again, it gets back to trusting the language of energy, trusting that deeper psychological process that's happening. But the nuts and bolts of it are, we have our children are our teachers, whether we like it or not, as much as we are theirs. We might have to help them brush their teeth and not get run over by cars and not get kidnapped by weirdos and learn how to go to school. Most schools aren't proper or working for our children these days either. But, if you treat your kid with respect, in fact, not even calling them children in many regards, once they hit, especially 13, 14, 15, that can help empower them too. I just know, I've seen it many times. I also work with a lot of parents and teach them this, and I've seen incredible transformations, where, an attitude of a parent who is trying their best. I have one just real last example before we have to go, but this beautiful client, friend, beautiful soul in Germany who has 2 gorgeous children, raising them alone, and has done an amazing job as a mom with everything. And her kids are already now 14, 15, 16 years of age, a girl and a boy. And yet she's like, I don't understand, Jennifer, but why they're starting to resist me now and they're starting to rebel. And I'm like, well, why is that? And she gave examples of rules that she has, where they have to go to bed at a certain time, where they can't have their phone at a certain time, or whatever it happens to be. And you could feel like that's, oh, ouch, too much, but she thought she was doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And that this is loving them and caring for them. And when I really showed her the effect that was having, and it was taking their power away from them, because they have an energy moving through them. The universe is moving through them, the chi and the Tao individually, just as it's moving through her. And if she tries to put a net on that and control it on old world parenting styles that she had adopted from her parents and all the way back, you're controlling the universe in that child. And then you wonder why they rebel. So you can't have rebellion in a vacuum. The child is rebelling, or the young adult is rebelling for a reason. It's trying to kick up against something, a control framework. So better that we learn to own our control. And just like I was talking earlier about in the workforce, it's that fine line of you knowing when it's time to say, all right, I surrender as the parent. You're absolutely right. Thank you, sweetheart, for your wisdom. I'm really sorry that I didn't see that, and that I, embarrassed you in front of your friends, or I'm really sorry that I'm sorry that I'm not trusting you. And the truth is when you're out after 11 p.m. at night and I don't know where you are, for that hour, I'm terrified. I'm terrified that something's going to happen to you and I'll end up being a bad parent. And even just owning that terror, the terror. And then what I've noticed is when I had to do that with the girls in different scenarios, even though it's not like I'm about to say, there you go, you can stay out all night, but it's still the feeling of I'm owning the fear. And then they can hear me. They're like, on some level, they're like, okay, my mom's making herself vulnerable and she's scared. And then the next thing, it can maybe, Mom, it's okay. I'm sensible. I'm not going to do that. Da, 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 da. So there's like this, suddenly she's able to be softer, and then she can be more mature.
I like that.
Remember, I'm not the only mature one that's holding all the authority, making her this little child. Whenever I soften and I'm like, God, I'm just really scared that something's going to happen to you, and I own that, then she's able to meet me there. And it almost unconsciously asks of her to be more responsible.
Yeah. You're trusting her that she'll, think about that in her way and respond and have responsibility, the ability to respond.
Yes, exactly.
There's just like even just in those few sentences that you just said, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk to you about. Control, it's a whole other hour or two we could talk about.
Maybe do another podcast on
control, and but I suppose one thing I'll ask you before we kind of finish up and kind of help people to connect to you is, if someone's really struggling right now and they're listening to this and they're suffering some way, there's some underlying niggle, they're just feeling bad, they're feeling sad or lonely or confused or worse, have you got anything you'd like to kind of advise them to try or to do or to think about? Obviously I want them to go along and experience you in Belfast soon, when you can tell us about that in a second, but is there a way to think about that, Jen?
Yeah, I mean, first step, you're going to need help. You're going to have to start getting out of yourself and find someone that can help you. I mean, I'm just going to be practically honest. Second of all, if you want to get into the metaphysical realm, of just to start right now, is recognizing that everything that you're feeling that's not love, gratitude, connection, feeling good about yourself, it's an illusion. It's part of the cloak, and it's not who you really are. It looks real, tastes real, feels real. It's going to throw tantrums in your psyche. It's going to try to take possession of you and take hold of you. But the truth is, it's not who you are. And your work is going to be to learn how to separate and disengage from it, to get back to yourself. And likelihood is you're not going to be able to do that on your own at this time. If you could, you would have figured it out already. So you're going to have to try to find people who are maybe just a few steps ahead of you in the evolution of life in that department, and who have learned to do that. That's what I had to do. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed a teacher who had worked hard to clean out his closet. And then I used teachers in the form of my fellow students and my community in Sangha to bounce off of. So really it's about finding somewhere, whether it's traditional therapy or even AA meetings or some sort of spiritual group or whatever it happens to be. You know, it's being open to that possibility. And then right now, you know, as taboo as this is for our wonderful Northern Irish mindset, start opening up your mind and your thoughts and consciousness to the intelligence of the universe. And that means starting to speak to it as if it's a friend. As crazy as that may sound, it'll be one of the best things that you've ever done. Because as soon as you do that, as soon as you say that, for example, you just go for a walk, put your winter woolies on and head out for a walk by yourself and head down with your hands in your pockets and just say, like you said earlier, start off with Great Spirit, dear universe, dear divine, whatever you want to call it. I'm having a really bloody hard time right now. And, you know, it just seems never ending. It's like a vicious circle. No matter what I do, I just seem to dig a deeper hole. And I'm really giving up inside. Like this is hard. Nothing seems to be really working out for me. And if you have that honest dialogue, but make sure you start off with dear universe, because then you're opening a portal or a doorway in your psyche to a greater intelligence. Even if you have never talked to it before, you don't know what it looks or feels like, it doesn't matter. Because when you open that doorway in your consciousness, the light starts to pour in.
The light just changed as you said that, by the way. Anyway, nice timing.
It's true. And it starts to wake something up inside of you. So start dialoguing with this unseen creative intelligence that's in your world. And then not only are you going to confess and share the reality, make yourself vulnerable with the universe. Like start there. If you can't do it with other people, start there in a private walk. And then, okay, Great Spirit, which is my personal pet name for it. It's just what my teacher taught me. It's the Native American tradition. You know, Great Spirit, I need your help. I need your help. Just like Jim Carrey talks about in all those Facebook videos, ask and thou shalt be given. Like ask, you just have to ask. So Great Spirit, I need your help. I want you to fill my body with light, the color of the sun, power of the sun. I want you to fill every cell of my body with light. And I want you to go after and unlock all this stuff that I'm feeling and all the heaviness that I'm carrying. And I want you to burn it out, lift it out of me, transform it. And I'll get out of the way and I'll feel it. And I want you to transform it. And while you're at it, Great Spirit, would you find me a teacher or find me a group or something that can help me really get this and start to clean out my closet of everything I'm not. Most of what I'm feeling, if I'm feeling something that is shitty and it's not love-based, then it's illusion. It's the cloak. It's what I've inherited epigenetically. It's not me. And I need help cleaning it out. So Great Spirit, do your work. And then keep walking. Walking. Keep feeling the shit. Let the shit get stronger. You know, often when we ask the universe to do something, you can be guaranteed that it's going to get more painful before it lightens. That's the alchemical process that I teach, the transformational process. There's a lot of nuts and bolts to it. If you come along to the workshop, you'll start learning. But it's all about learning to work with the universe and transform thyself and all the stuff that's not thyself. So start dialoguing with the universe right now if you're having a hard time, and get your butt to someone. Find someone somewhere. If it's not me, there's plenty of people out there who can help you.
And that's really exciting, Jen. You know, it's a relief to know that it's not like, you know, you don't need thousands of pounds and, something complicated here. You've got it all, and you just need to, have a little bit of trust, even if you don't believe in anything. Let's just start having that chat and see what happens.
And to realize you're not alone.
Yeah,
I
which
mean,
I felt a lot. Yeah,
most
before.
of us feel insanely alone with our stuff
Mm-hmm.
and with who we are,
Mm-hmm.
incredibly.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you are not going to be able to transform yourself alone. If you
No.
could, you would have figured it out by now. You're going to need
Yeah.
to get help. You're going to
Yeah.
need to get help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not being weak. Far from it.
No, it's brilliant. Okay, Jen, I think we'll wrap it up. But before we go, maybe just let people know the best ways to connect with you. And if you remember the dates of Belfast coming up off the top of your head, if you don't, I can put them in the notes
No, I
afterwards.
do. My assistant would
When
be
are you
very
coming
upset
over?
with me if I didn't. Oh, it's Friday, February 9th, 10th, and 11th. So
Okay.
February 9th begins at, I believe, 6:30 p.m. until 9:30 p.m. That's the introduction evening. It's where we begin to just get to know each other and we bring the light through and get the process started. And then Saturday, Sunday, it goes from 10 a.m. until 6 both days with an hour and a half lunch in the middle.
Yeah. And
And
as usual, pardon?
go ahead.
And
Go
as
ahead.
usual, there. I mean, from my in my experience, I had people there from Germany, from the
Mm-hmm.
US, from
Mm-hmm.
Canada. Maybe there
Mm-hmm.
were people from all over the world. Is that the kind of
Yeah,
experience? Yeah,
it's different every time, but
yeah,
there's definitely people flying in.
yeah,
And we're having it in Shakti Studio, which is
yeah,
Millis Road, I believe, in Belfast.
yeah.
Gorgeous.
That's where I went. It
That's
was
where you
lovely.
went
Yeah,
last time, yeah. So Shakti Studio, my sponsor there, organizer, his name is Ryan, beautiful soul.
yeah.
Don't
I know
remember
Ryan.
his email offhand, but you will find the contact details. Get in touch with Ryan to
Yeah.
register. He can also help with Airbnbs. Like I said, people
Mhm.
fly in, and Airbnb is a great way, or hotel or something, hostels, whatever.
Yeah.
And go to my website, which is either jennifermillar.org, JENNIFERMILLAR.org.
I'll put the link in the notes. Yeah.
Perfect. Or cellulartransformation.org.
Okay.
And then on there, you'll see the workshops tab. Go to Belfast or Berlin or Vienna or Australia, wherever. There's a whole bunch. But yeah, and I hope to see you guys in Belfast.
Yes, and
my home turf, not quite my home turf, but I did hang out a lot in Belfast, so
yeah, I think it makes it extra special.
Belfast,
I think it makes it extra special if you can do it in Belfast with this being. I think there is maybe, I don't know, I haven't been to the other ones, but it feels like there's a different kind of energy by just coming to the one that's here where you grew up. But Jen, thank you so much. I mean, this has been this is the beginning of this thing for me, and it's a real honor to have you be on at the very beginning. And thank you for everything that you've done for me. And it's only the tip of the iceberg. And I look forward to continuing the work with you. And we'll cut it here, and we'll pick it up again personally. And I will encourage everyone to go along. And thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you, Dean, and big congrats on your podcast. And you're a vulnerable, brave warrior for being feeling your stuff, and I really commend you for it and support you 100%. And let's do it again. Let's explore these other topics more, because I feel as much.
There's some great stuff to be talked about. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.